Buti, Manamela and Yershen Pillay with Peter and Dora talking about the youth of South Africa and going forward. A couple of the things here. This is from Mbuzo Hlaza. He is saying, what is the plan? Where is the NDP? How does this filter to the respective departments? That's one of the questions, I think so. This is one that's asking, all of these things, are they for urban and rural areas? There's another question to the panel. Tankiso saying SMMEs in villages have limited access to the services. The service should be placed in a working website. That's something else. Basically, someone else just not happy with the NYDA, just saying that it's not an organization that's working for the youth. Mbuso Mohlane saying this one. So it'll be good to see what the NYDA have to say about this one. Sivuyile saying, let's talk about the past E in the agenda, entrepreneurs. What plans are there to assist young entrepreneurs? That's something that people are wanting to have addressed here as well. And then finally, Trevor Mabasa saying, we have exceeded youth targets every year. Where can the NYDA annual reports be read, if that's what they are stating? There are a lot more, so when you're ready to hear some more comments, you can come back to us here in the Johannesburg studio. But right now, let's go back to you, Peter, to respond to a couple of these.
All right, Leanne, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get some comments. NDP, National Development Plan, it's out there. And I keep asking, sadly, every week, various leaders sit in this chair, and I don't know how it is that we can make it come alive and make a difference. It's in paper at the moment, it's on the website, but how does it take form so that all the plans that are in there that can solve our problems can start to happen?
Look, I mean, I'm sure you would in the future have a conversation with Minister Jeff Radebe. But what our thinking is that we've got to go out there and talk, particularly to young people, about what the National Development Plan is. And I think one of the things that is accepted is that it is not a static document. It is a living document which we all need to engage into. But what is happening now is that all government departments are discussing what we call the medium-term strategy framework, which is government's plans for the next 5 years to implement the National Development Plan. So I hope that all South Africans, particularly young people, will look at the discussions as they take place and contribute into what should become South Africa's plan for the next 5 years. But I think also more importantly, what we would do, when the president spoke to me, he specifically said to me that the main thing that I should be looking into is issues of youth development. And I think more youth development in the countryside. Yes, we are an urbanizing country, but I think critically, the young people in the countryside who should be concentrating on certain and different sets of the economy, agriculture, and so forth and so forth. So those are the people who, we will obviously be looking at without obviously neglecting young people in the cities.
Yes, and NYDA, it seems that people are underwhelmed by what your agency's been doing. Sibusiso Mwabe from the NFP says, this is a structure that was formed for the youth of this country, but is unknown to the youth in the rural areas and townships. It's not visible and vocal on youth affairs. We only learn about the structure when there's some corruption activities going on. We therefore believe we need to revisit the necessity of this structure and as it continues to waste money for the youth in this country. People are not impressed. Why? You talked about reaching 1 million people in the last year, but you've been at it 5 years now. You should be blazing a trail of glory.
Well, I mean, firstly, we can expect a response like that from the NFP, who's not in government. And I think this is we're not part of the culture that we seem to be losing as the youth movement, which is a very proud culture from our history, is one of being at the forefront of solutions, of providing new ideas, being innovative, being creative. And I think we should not, we should guard against going into a culture of mediocrity, of complacency, of dependency on the state to lead us to more opportunities, etc. For example, I mean, you ask about the annual performance plan. It shows you only have to go right now onto the NYDA website, and on the front page, click on the annual plan. So it means we tend to ask questions without being proactive. Going into an NYDA branch, looking at the NYDA website, using social media, trying to access information first before we run and start complaining and saying, well, we're not getting. It's understandable, Peter. You apply, you may not be successful. You might be angry and frustrated as a result of not getting support from the NYDA. But let's channel that anger and frustration strategically towards finding solutions, not only that solutions that are dependent on the NYDA, but we've got many other state entities. We've got the private sector we need to assist. We've got civil society organizations, community itself. And I think that part of the mindset change as we inform a new development agenda for young people is for us as young people to ask, well, what is it that we can do to build houses, to access, to drive reindustrialization? And the question of rural development. The program that we are busy with Mintek is in Priska, where young people are driving reindustrialization practically by adding value to gemstones and creating jobs for other young people in the process. They're not complaining about the NYDA.
All right, so your spokesperson, Sia Magadla, told Morning Live during the month of June, he said, the youth must meet us halfway and take on the opportunities that government has created. What are these opportunities that they're not picking up? Is it because they don't know about them, or is it because they're bone idle? Because clearly you're saying, meet us halfway. They're not doing their bit. What is it that they're missing out on?
I'll give you a response I read from our Facebook site. On any given day, we post a number of opportunities, be it a learnership, a bursary, a scholarship, and including from the private sector. Now, you ideally want a young person to download that form and make the application and go and get that opportunity. You don't want a young person to say, please get me there. Why should we get you there? You should be proactive enough to take the leadership role when you've accessed that information, which you did not have access to in the first place. So that's what we mean by meeting us halfway. If we are able to provide a one-stop shop for access to information, we may not be in your community, but using social media, for example. How do you then take advantage of that opportunity and go and get that opportunity? Be it a learnership, as I said, a bursary, a scholarship. And again, how do you persist after you have been declined? Because many of our young entrepreneurs who succeed do so after many attempts of trying to access a loan.
So what do the youth in the rural areas do, particularly where there's no electricity? They're not going to get onto the internet and see these opportunities. How are you reaching them, and how can they participate when they just don't have access?
Well, we've got to get access to them. And we have 198 local youth officers. The aim is to use those local youth officers as advisory centers to provide information, to also work with municipalities, to work with the small companies who are operating in those rural areas, and to say to them, let's give young people a chance. Let them learn. Let's turn the workplace into a training space. And let's make sure that we work collectively at this, because there's no silver bullet to these challenges. It has to be a multi-pronged approach. It has to involve all stakeholders, and young people have got to be at the forefront of that.
All right, okay. We're going to talk entrepreneurship a little bit later on, but let's go back to our tables now. Thandi Badi is on table 13 and has some thoughts on skilling.
Good morning, everyone. If you missed it, my name is Thandi Badi, and I'm from Diné Land Systems. And I'm also a chairperson of the Young Professional Forum at Diné Land Systems. It is one thing to employ youth in companies to increase people of color numbers for BEE or triple BEE recognition, especially in state-owned enterprises. However, we still have this challenge of skills transfer from people with skills. But don't get this twisted. Our group CEO, Mr. Ramji, is really passionate about skills transfer and really has done tremendous initiative. But how can government proactively assist us to make sure that the people with skills really understand the business goals and the positive impact it could have by allowing us as young professionals to assist them with innovative ideas in projects? Thank you.
Okay, skills transfer. There seems to be a culture of compliance rather than genuine upskilling of people.
No, that's true to a certain extent. And I think once we have compliance, then I think we're getting somewhere. There are a lot of young people in established South African industries who continue to make a difference in government, in the private sector, in all spheres and sectors of our society, who have showed that it is not about how old you are, but it is about how committed you are to what you are doing. And I think that we've got to give a round of applause to those young people. But I think more importantly, they seem to be certain barriers created, either on the basis of color, on the basis of either nepotism, or all manner of things, wherein, because the employment equity says, we only have to comply up to this far, young, black, mostly women, South Africans continue to be marginalized, particularly in the private sector. Now, government can only legislate and on an annual basis look at the reports of the Commissions of Employment Equity. It is also about how we act collectively to make sure that the laws of this country are complied to.
Bernice, why is the private sector not, and I'm not saying this is Mintek, but it does seem that the private sector will do the bare minimum to comply, and there just doesn't seem to be this urgency to do the skills transfer?
No, there is definitely an urgency to do the skills transfer. Like I have alluded earlier on to say that we're working within the communities and we're going out there and telling them that skills development, it is the way to go. And skills development is what can take you out of the situation that you are in currently and give you a better opportunity or a better life going forward.
All right, okay, let me just, there's private sector in here. Is there anyone who wants to share their thoughts about some of the things that they've seen in their environment in the private sector? Because skills transfer is a big one, and it just keeps coming up time and time again. And I wonder, is the private sector doing enough? Bernice says it is happening, but we're getting questions suggesting that perhaps it isn't. Anyone would like to share their thoughts at all before we go on to the next person? Anybody? Private sector? Okay, so there's two hands there. Let's start there and then go to you. Let's just get a quick sense from the private sector. Just stand up, say your name and your thoughts.
Morning, everyone. My name is Yamgela Ngqenqa from the NUM, National Union of Mine Workers. I'm working as a SLP coordinator in Sibanye Gold. What is happening in the private sector is that the companies only feel the pressure of compliance in terms of skills transfer when they wanna submit to the Department of Labor and stuff. So what is happening now is that during the year, they don't feel any pressure until we say we won't sign, and then they make sure that they get together with the government to make sure that the company do comply. So what we are going to ask today from the government side is that the government must make sure that it goes hand in hand with the labor organizations to make sure this thing does happen. Thank you.
Okay, and then a quick thought from the gentleman here with the red tie.
Good morning. I'm Eugene Mtetwa. Maybe I should explain the hats that I'm wearing.
Yeah.
I'm drumpies in the entertainment area. And by virtue, that places me in the heart, at the center of youth development. I'm also the acting general secretary of the Creative Workers Union. And in the private sector, I have a company that is called Top Crew, which does film. And we've been engaging with government, with NYDA. We are prepared to take 2,000 young people immediately and employ them. But the machinery of government is very slow. One of the things I think that is a missing link is that we talk about training, we talk about internships, but we don't talk about placement. Currently, Deputy Minister, in your department, you have young people who are doing an internship who were released yesterday back to uncertainty at home. And I'm saying it cannot happen. It must start at home. It must begin with that. I wish you could look at that. Yershen, to us, as private sector, we are willing to do certain things. But it seems like the funding goes to quick wins that have PR, immediate PR on them, instead of the actual development and placement of young people. We have dissolute young people in the country who are going back and forth from NYDA, filling forms, very complicated forms, very complicated information that is required, and an immediate systematic exclusion. In some of these things, you are required to provide a bank balance of 10 million. Immediately, it excludes young people. There's no young person who's got a 10 million rent in order to access a tender. These are the things that we need to deal with.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with you, Mr. Government. You've been accused of of siding with the employer often when there's challenges that labor is facing, and you've got to start at home. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Government?
Look, I think one of the most active periods of the Minister of Labour is when she releases the Commission of the Commission of Employment Equity report, and taking a lot of beating from organizations such as Solidarity, but also from the private sector. And government, I think, has made it very clear that we are not going to compromise. And there has been amendment to that effect to ensure that in South Africa, if you do equal work of equal value, you must be paid equally. And that if there is an opportunity that is created for two people of two different color with the same skills for them to be promoted, that a black person should be preferred. And government is unequivocal about that. But yes, let us fight for space in existing industry. That's important. But I think more importantly, we have to create new industries which black people will take pride into, instead of fighting with, in spaces which are mainly dominated by white males. That's the reality, that our economy is predominantly owned and controlled by white male. Government has to, and I think, beyond the small sense that Pillay has at the NYDA, there's the IDC, there's all sorts of, government entities that have been set up to create entities which black people will be proud of, where we will not fight about being suppressed as black people in white companies. I think that we have to really. I'm listening to what Eugene is saying. Yeah. And if there are young people who are interns in the department, we'll have to talk to them. We'll have to make sure that we correct that information. But I'm worried about the inside info that he has, even though he's from Trumpis.
Red tape. I mean, this is crippling your initiatives in the end. This is the suggestion that's been raised.
Well, we acknowledge that we've done exceptionally well in the last year to reposition the NYDA into a more credible and capable development agency. But we are not there yet. We still have a long way to go, in fact. And part of it is a focus on efficiency. cleaning up the systems, the processes, the policies, not only in the NYDA for that matter. Many state entities are faced with the same challenges, and also private sector entities. And so to make the operation more efficient, one of the things we have really embarked on is a cleanup of these policy systems and processes. It's not going to happen overnight, Peter. And one of the things really the CEO of the NYDA, Mr. Ramokumba, and his team have already started a process of reviewing the way operations run, visiting
but
NYDA
Yershen,
branches.
you've been there all along. You're the last man standing, so you know what the issues are. Why has it taken so long for you to get to this point where we're saying we're reviewing, we're fixing?
Well, it's not a long, I mean, the grant program, for example, it's a 6-month-old program. And so you will have people complaining, but we've had to wait 6 months for a response to this. It's not right, I agree, fully understandable. The same might go for when you start to review the quality of services. One would say what we've been applying to the NYDA, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of red tape. Again, nothing to complain about, only to say that in some areas we've made progress. In other areas where you find complaints, there's still a lot more work to be done. But I think that the plan and the roadmap is there. It's just a matter of time before. We're not going to get it right, Pete, completely. But we should be able to get it at optimum levels for efficient, effective service delivery. All right.
Mr. Government, if people don't deliver, are they going to get fired now? Because, without consequences, we'll have these conversations year in and year out.
Well, I mean, clearly the responsibility of the Department on National Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation is to ensure that the ANC elections manifesto is implemented to the latter. That will be done through the medium-term strategy framework, and the President will make an assessment and an evaluation of the performance of ministers, of DGs, of departments on the basis of the commitments that the ANC has made to the people. And certainly if, if any of the members of the executive or cabinet or the departments are not performing, definitely heads need to roll. And that applies, to government agencies, and so forth and so forth.
And you will get feedback from the voters in 2 years' time, I'm sure, as well. Okay, Ted Harrigal, table number 2. Ted Harrigal, table number 2. Yep. If you could stand up, we'll get a microphone to you.
Good morning, all. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to voice what concerns we have for our youth currently. And I think what has happened is that as leaders and adults of South Africa, we have failed our youths drastically. Now it's time for us to have the opportunity to make right for our youths. We've come out with a plan and a program, and we're asking government, how are you willing to assist us? We immediately can create 5,000 jobs for our youths, not actually jobs, but business opportunities, whereby we register the business on the youth or the recipient, whereby they don't work for anyone, they become independent, and they become employed, running their own business, which we register on their name. And that is 5,000 immediate employment for them. And this will continue to roll out throughout South Africa. This is an opportunity for us. We want to cut out the red tape and all the other organizations that is for years.
What's holding you back? Why can't you do it?
What we are saying is that we need the assistance of government, we need the assistance of other stakeholders, and what channels can we go to roll these plans out? Number one, we've been held back with the NPC, NPO registration that is currently holding us back. And our project is called the Power of Zero. The Power of Zero meaning that a person, the recipient to this business initiative, has nothing, that is, nobody has recognized them. And with this initiative, they don't inject even 1 cent in this plan or this business program that we have for them with all the skills and training. So we're asking government, please, what channels can you lead us to roll this out to be a success? From 5,000 jobs, immediately we'll go through.
Mr. Harrigal, I'm going to ask you again, what's holding you back? Put an ad in the paper say, look, there's 5,000 opportunities, contact us on this number. Why does government need to get involved?
What we are saying is that we are willing, because we got the recipients that is going to inject no capital whatsoever in the business, we're asking government, are you willing to help us to take the next step to make the dreams of these individuals
so you need
come
money.
true? Well, in a sense, yes. Yes, in a sense.
Okay. All right. Now we're getting to the crux of the matter.
Now, I was going to ask, what's the catch?
Okay. All right. So there are a lot of great ideas that people have to create jobs, and I guess this is where the interface now comes between government and the NYDA. Where do they go with these ideas for job creation, for funding? That's kind of what he's saying.
Well, don't look at me, Peter, because we've asked the Deputy Minister for more funding for the NYDA.
Look, I mean, the NYDA gives young people, based on the credibility of and workability, if there's such a word, of their ideas, innovations, and all of that, 100,000 rands grant. They've given, I think, 598 in the last year. We're hoping that if you know, there's more money injected in the NYDA, more grants will be given. We, you know, have actually appreciate that the NYDA have listened to young youth formations and young people out there when they said, you know, relook at this thing of loans, and that's why they've moved towards grants. There's a partnership between the NYDA and IDC and CIFA, which I think has got, what, 10 million rands?
2.7 billion.
2.7 billion rands, which, you know, if the idea of 5,000 immediate job opportunities is credible and has merits, you know, can obviously be looked into. You know, there'll always be, you know, people with the grandest of ideas. And when you listen to them, you know, it doesn't matter where you are. You may be in the office or in a restaurant or in a tavern. They sound very convincing, but practically they may not actually work. So I think that we really have to ensure that government does not ultimately put, you know, money into a pitless, you know, hole, and that there are no results that are visible.
All right, so there's a number of countries around the world that have gone through the same journey that we have. I think of Singapore. It wasn't that long ago, actually, that Gabon had a higher GDP than Singapore, but they did some certain things right, and now they're a leading economy in the world. Another country, South Korea, and they've created companies such as Samsung, Daewoo, you name it, they've done well. Luckily for us, we have somebody from South Korea, Janice Daun-Jeong, who's with the International Youth Fellowship. And perhaps let's just get a thought of what South Korea might have done well that we could learn from. Perhaps she's on table number 5, if you could stand up. And if we can just say, if you could just tell us what South Korea's experience, what is it that, how can we build Samsungs and Daewoos in South Africa?
Well, good morning, everyone. Well, hearing the Deputy Minister and especially Mr. Yershen Pillay, I see a lot of traits of what South Korea did in our country, in South Africa. Well, South Korea followed a model of a developmental state where the state's resources and policies were very much geared towards economic development. And especially for youth unemployment, the state strongly and heavily invested in R&D, research and development, and human resource development. So a lot of students were encouraged to go and study overseas through state grants and scholarships. And it did not end there. So once their studies are finished, they will be encouraged to come back home and contribute towards the national economic development. So there was a lot of incentive from the state for the private companies to provide jobs and also to provide like strong incentives like high income level. So I would say that there was a strong state intervention for youth unemployment as well as for education. And well, I guess this model is not perfectly replicable in South Africa because obviously the two countries are different, we have different histories, but I think it might be a good lesson for South Africa.
All right,
you.
so thank you very much indeed. Are we doing some of those things right? Are we doing them fast enough? And how do we get our students to come home and build the country?
Look, I mean, the National Development Plan, relied heavily on, East Asian developments, China, South Korea, Singapore, and many of those. In fact, at the center of the medium-term strategy framework is the Malaysian model, where you're talking big, fast results, high impact, lock up people into a room and say, we've got marine resources, we've got mineral resources, platinum here. How do we use state, resources, power, influence in order to ensure that yield results? And one of the critical things which is in the National Development Plan, which has been a practice over the last 5 years. If you'd recall, in 1996, government's macroeconomic strategy was more about cutting, social spending, reducing, spending on education, health, investment into human development. Now, we've moved away from that, so more money goes into skills, more money goes into the CSIR, which is for research and development. I ask myself, why, for instance, when we have all the minerals in the country that can make a car, but we export all those minerals and then buy the car from somewhere else? Cell phones, laptops, all of those things. And if government's plan of investing more resources, which is, by the way, in place, more financial resources into industrial development, all of those things will begin to change. And young people will then be able to take, advantage of all of those opportunities. More than 3,500 young South Africans are studying abroad. As doctors, as engineers, as scientists, all of those have got a commitment to come back into the country and help move South Africa forward.
All right, okay. I'm going to take a quick commercial break just now, but perhaps some of the things that I'd like you to think about during that break, and then we can discuss afterwards, is we talk about entrepreneurship a lot, and yet one of the sad statistics is that most of these businesses, small businesses, are going to fail within the next 5 years. So is that the answer? And also, not everybody's supposed to be an entrepreneur. Even clever people struggle at being an entrepreneur. So maybe this is something we need to explore. What is the perfect model? Is it entrepreneurship or other vehicles of job creation? Let's hear your thoughts after this break. Stay with us.